Understanding gates. Let's talk about the NAND gate. What do you think a NAND gate means? I want you to look at the word. We have "and" in it, and then an in the front. What do you think that means? It's the opposite of an AND gate. So think about an AND gate. You know that you have two inputs coming in, and they're wired in series. And then you get an output. The NAND gate gives you an opposite state for the output. Let's take a look. So here's our truth table. With an AND gate, when both switches are on because they're in series, then the output is on. When both switches are on with a NAND gate, you get the opposite effect on the output. This one is on. The NAND is flipped. It's inverted, so it's off. When either switch is on, but the other one is off in an AND gate, then the output is off. In a NAND gate, the output would be on. Do you see that? And then in an AND gate, when both switches are off, the output is off. In a NAND gate, you want to flip that. Both switches are off and the output is on. So therefore, what you can see from this, take a look at the pattern. AND gate, when both switches are on, the output is on. Otherwise, the output is always off. The NAND gate, when both switches are on, the output is off. Otherwise, what? The output is always on. See the difference? Now, I want you to think about this. It's thought time. Ready? What gives us opposite state out of an AND gate? We just saw from the truth tables, it took the output, whatever that output was, and it flipped it, correct? It gave us the opposite state. That's an inverter. What else do we use an inverter for? It was the first gating lesson that we talked about. It was a NOT, correct? And if you remember on that symbol, this little circle here told us that that was an inverter. So this is our AND gate, and we have an inverter on the end of it. So whatever comes out of the output of this AND gate gets flipped. Let's take a look. So here's our circuit. And what do you see? I see an AND gate and a NOT gate. Okay. When both switches are off, the output is on. See it? How does that work? Both switches are off. So therefore, what's coming out of both of the switches is what? Nothing. There's no power coming through because the switches are open. Just like on the wall for your lights, you can turn the light off in the room by flipping the switch to an off position. So then the AND gate sets nothing out of its output. And when the NOT sees that, what does it do? This is off. It's going to flip it, right? It's going to invert it. So therefore, the state now is true. And the light comes on. So let's look at it in pseudocode. Ready? What's the state of the first switch? False. What's the state of the second one? False. What's this going to evaluate to? True. So if true, then we're going to turn on the light. Let's look at the next one. So now I'm going to turn on the first switch and the second one is off. Notice that with the first switch on, we have power flowing through. It comes to the AND gate. But with an AND gate, we need them both turned on, don't we? So therefore, there's nothing coming out of the AND gate. The AND gate output is false. So therefore, the NOT flips it. It gives us the opposite state. It inverts it. So now the light is on. Let's take a look at that in pseudocode. Switch 1 is true. Switch 2 is false still. A true and false gives us what? Right there. It gives us a true. So if that's true, what do we get? The light turns on. Next one, we just flipped the state here. So switch 1 is off and switch 2 is on. It's going to be the same as it was in the opposite state. So let's go ahead and do that. And if we run through the pseudocode, we've got switch 1's off, switch 2 is on, that evaluates to true, and we turn on the light. Okay, here's where it might confuse you. Both switches are on. The light is off. I want you to take a second and I want you to look at this. What do you see? Both switches are on. So switch 1 is on and power flows through to the AND. Switch 2 is on and power flows through to the AND. So the output of the AND gate is on. What's the inverter do? It flips it. So then what's coming over here to the light? We have a 0 state. It's going to have it turned off. Now let's look at that in pseudocode. So switch 1 is on, switch 2 is on. That's going to evaluate to false. And if it's false, we know what happens. The then portion of a false will not evaluate, so therefore the light is not going to turn on. All right, so what are our takeaways here? The NAND has an inverter after the AND gate. Opposite output state as the AND gate. Does that make sense to you? So it has an inverter after it. It's just going to flip whatever state the AND gate is giving it. It's just going to flip it to the opposite state. So if both input states are true, then the NAND output is going to compute to false. Otherwise, it's going to be true.